but it's time to get this top 8 match underway between Steven and Arbin, and we can see the leads right off the back. It's the same. It's like looking in a mirror.
Hey, where's Water Urshifu, though? Whoa. It's two Dark Urshifus actually staring down each other. So one of the things I'm actually curious about here is just how the Urshifus and Tornadoes are trained relative to each other, right? Some people run Admin on Urshifu, some people run Jolly. The key thing to note here is that Steven has Focus Sash on his Urshifu, whereas Arbin has Choice Band on his. And so if you're Arbin, you're a little bit more vulnerable to just getting knocked out immediately. Both players putting on pressure with Flying type damage as well.
But more importantly, Steven actually has the Bleak Wind Storm, so you're able to hit both targets with your Flying type attack rather than what Arbin can. But it's going to be a tailwind on both sides. So now it comes down to how these Urshifu match up against each other. And it's going to be Steven's that moves first with the Wicked Blow to be able to take out their Tornadoes in one shot.
Yeah, so already huge, right? I think Arbin's Urshifu moving first there is really critical. If you're just slower than the opposing Urshifu, you get outsped, you get knocked out by close combat. That's a complete disaster. But now you've eliminated the Tornadoes from Steven's side. That means no potential for Bleak Wind Storms, no sunny days. So a very aggressive trade here on turn 1, but Blow players are able to set up Tailwind, and Arbin having this Tornado still around is valuable because it is able to deal damage with Air Slash, of course, super effective into Urshifu as well. It's going to be the main attack I think Tornadoes will want to consider at this point. Arbin's Tornadoes does have Taunt, but Taunt not really valuable in this situation. You can't even taunt the Urshifu because it's Dark typing. And there's the Farigiraf coming out.
Oh, okay. So Arbin did opt to bring the Farigiraf. And we'll see the booster energy activate here for Steven's Fluttermane. And so it's going to be the speed that actually gets heightened. And I think that's really important because it means now you are definitely really fast in this Tailwind.
I think my main question now is this Farigiraf. It's, like you mentioned, not Citrus Berry, it's Water Terra. So you saw Steven was considering this Dazzling Gleam, Dark Terra, Wicked Blow play. Does they get the knockout onto Farigiraf? Because if Farigiraf survives and gets a Trick Room up, that can get really awkward really quickly. A lot about this matchup coming in, I was asking, can Farigiraf actually set up Trick Room? So it's already a really pivotal turn here.
Yeah, Steven also still has that Focus Sash intact. And so that'll be really helpful in order to actually allow this Urshifu to continue to just hit away at all of these threats on Arbin's side. But here's the Terra, and it will end up being that Farigiraf.
All right, this Fluttermane is, a little bit weaker. There's no choice specs, and so Dazzling Gleam, when you're not a specs Fairy Terra, Fluttermane doesn't do as much damage, speed booster energy as well. So it's going to be a little bit of chip from Dazzling Gleam. I really do think Wicked Blow gets the knockout, but here's Air Slash. Does it get a flinch, first of all? No flinch. Here's the Dark Terra. Wicked Blow now into Farigiraf. Terra no longer super effective, but it still secures the knockout after the Dazzling Gleam damage.
What a great way to double up into that slot while also not locking yourself out of other opportunities. And so we will not see that Farigiraf get a chance to do much of anything in this first game, as the Blood Moon Ursaluna is going to be the 4th and final here for Arbin to have to take its place.
Yeah, but now the Fluttermane can just go for an Icy Wind, drop the speed immediately, and then you can just simply click Close Combat, get the knockout onto the Ursaluna. Ursaluna, of course, can't even protect itself in front of that. So I think Icy Wind here is really safe. You could consider something like a Moonblast as well, but the main thing here is actually there's the Covert Cloak on the Tornado, so because of that you don't drop its speed, so you go for Sucker Punch here instead, or maybe Detect this turn. But I think Steven's in a really, really good spot to secure this first game.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't know what more Arbin can do in this situation except to hope to get a call right with the Tornadus and just get a knockout. I think this Urshifu goes down no matter what, but I think the Sucker Punch is also a really great way to bypass the Tornadus being faster.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting if Tornadus doesn't go for an attacking move, but it indeed does, and so Sucker Punch will secure the knockout. What Arbin was hoping for in that position is that you don't go for the Sucker Punch, you try to close combat into the Blood Moon. I was calling the close combat play earlier, but the Covert Cloak on Tornadus actually changes that, so I think Sucker Punch, honestly, a really safe play to go for. Arbin in that position could have gone for a Protect, and then Ursaluna maybe goes for a Hyper Voice for Blood Moon, but correctly calling that Sucker Punch means that you should just immediately win the game because the Urshifu now just beats the Ursaluna Blood Moon.
Yeah, and not to mention Steven still has one more Pokemon in the back, so it's going to be a 2v1, and Steven will lock up this first game in a very quick fashion. That's the power of Tailwind right there.
It really is, yeah, and Arbin was able to match the Tailwind, right, but ends up still falling short. It turns out, this Dark Terra Urshifu with Wicked Blow is just really powerful. And that's why I was saying, like, I don't know if Arbin going for the Tailwind route really feels that great in this matchup, but I think the problem is he probably doesn't feel like he can safely set up Trick Room, right? Like, Farigiraf is really vulnerable. The fact that a Dazzling Gleam and Dark Terror Wicked Blow gets the knockout makes it really, really difficult to lead Farigiraf. There's no fake out pressure. There's no follow me pressure with the Farigiraf. And so it's a lot harder to just guarantee setting up Trick Room. So naturally, when you lose a game like that, the first thing you kind of point to is, okay, well, the lead specifically, right? Was Tornadus Urshifu the best lead from my end to respond to their Tornadus Urshifu? I don't know if like prioritizing knocking out Tornadus on the other hand is actually really that important, whereas like Urshifu feels really scary because of Farigiraf in the back, right? So I think that game one maybe looks a little bit different if Arbin decides to launch close combat immediately into Steven's Urshifu instead of Wicked Blowing the Tornadus.
Oh, we can get some highlights about how that first game went, but that's exactly what you were talking about, is that the Urshifu did go after the Tornadus. While it did get the knockout, it left Steven room to just bring in this Flutter Mane and just continue to whack away at Arbin's team. And that Air Slash wasn't enough to pick up this Urshifu.
Man, that was so much damage. And yeah, Urshifu just having that Focus Sash means that you're pretty safe, honestly, even in front of the Air Slash. And so I think like breaking that Focus Sash on Urshifu is actually going to be a really, really big deal. I think if you're Arbin, you can also consider leading your Choice Specs Flutter Mane immediately, right? Tornadus Flutter Mane actually feels a lot stronger into Tornadus plus Urshifu on the opposing side, where you just pressure with Dazzling Gleam immediately. You can even pressure with something like Dazzling Gleam and Air Slash onto the opposing Urshifu. And so you could go with Tornadus once again with Arbin, right? Like the reason he's not leading Farigiraf is because there are so many combos of Pokemon that can just secure a knockout onto it. But if I were Arbin, I would consider maybe leaving Urshifu in the back. I think Flutter Mane would be a really nice mix-up if you're expecting Steven to go with the same Pokemon as the leads.
I was thinking that Flutter Mane feels really nice here, and if you expect to see some more special attackers on Steven's side, then you could also consider the Hisui and Arcanine. But there's the adjustment that you called out, Aaron. For Arbin, it will be the Flutter Mane and the Tornadus, but Steven's running back the Urshifu and the Tornadus.
Yeah, so I think once again, both players probably happy to just trade Tailwinds here. You can see Steven opting for that Dark Terror Wicked Blow option immediately. Of course, Arbin could go for Tailwind with Tornadus of your own. Flutter Mane then can just go for something like a Dazzling Gleam. You know, the Terra here just allows you to get an increase in damage, where even if the Flutter Mane Terras, I would think Dark Terra Wicked Blow into a Dark Terra Sucker Punch might be enough to secure the knockout. So Arbin is going to start off this game with the Terra on Flutter Mane, and yeah, I think the idea here is to knock out Urshifu so that you don't just immediately lose your Farigiraf when you bring it in afterwards, because I would guess it's Farigiraf Blood Moon once again in the back.
But that might be even better, though. If you're able to just kind of get some damage down immediately with this Flutter Mane and you get that Urshifu out of the way, then it's a little bit easier to be able to set up the Trick Room when you know that the Farigiraf is under way less threat.
Totally.
But it will be a Terrestrialization for both the Flutter Mane and the Urshifu, and it will be Tailwind here from Steven, but will Arbin match it? And yes, it will be a Tailwind from that side as well.
So the Dark Terra here doesn't really help out that much defensively because Fairy Terra Dazzling Gleam is still so much damage, but of course it allows you to deal a little bit more damage with that Wicked Blow as Tornadus just gets one shot. That's a critical hit. You can see Steven was surprised by that KO. Yeah, I would not have expected Tornadus to fin in that position without that critical hit.
Oh, that's a really big door that gets to swing open for Arbin. The Wicked Blow will connect, and it's going to be into the Flutter Mane. Now that it's Terra Fairy, it is able to survive that Wicked Blow, but you're gonna have to deal with another Flutter Mane on the other side, which does have the booster energy.
It's got that booster energy, so guaranteed to outspeed the Flutter Mane on the opposing side. You don't even have to click Sucker Punch on Urshifu anymore. Sucker Punch is also scary because, of course, the Farigiraf could switch in at any point, so you could, of course, just go for something like an Icy Wind or Dazzling Gleam here. The problem is this Covert Cloak, though, on the opposing Tornadus, right? Because it means that you are still going to be slower with your Urshifu. Urshifu, of course, could just go for Sucker Punch here or Detect to get around that, but opting for the Wicked Blow here does put you at risk of Tornadus just air slashing the Urshifu for a knockout. And if Urshifu gets KO'd, okay, yeah, no protects across the board, no switches, so you'll get that air slash off into Urshifu if that's the target. No Sucker Punch comes out, Urshifu feigns, hey, Farigiraf gets to come out now and maybe set up Trick Room.
That would be really nice to have that switch there, but it will be an air slash into the Urshifu, so it does not get a chance to secure another Wicked Blow. And Urshifu now down for the count, and that's going to be 2 Pokemon down here for Steven. He's down to his final 2.
Yeah, the lack of Sucker Punch there can maybe be implied that you're a little bit worried about Tornadus protecting or switching out there, and so wanting to aggressively target down the Flutter Mane slot. If Tornadus, for example, switches into Farigiraf, that's actually kind of just a game-winning play immediately. But Choice Band Urshifu now hits the field, actually.
And we're going to see the Gamora as the 4th and final for Steven. So this is a really interesting matchup because I feel like Gamora in this situation feels really good. Maybe if not for like close combat from the Urshifu.
Yeah, it's a really interesting spot. I was actually really surprised to see Urshifu come out first here because its matchup in a Flutter Mane is already awkward, right? The Flutter Mane will outpace you and can just get a super effective attack off here. So I think if you're Arbin, you basically have to make the call here of, do I Sucker Punch the Flutter Mane? Do I want to Wicked Blow and make a prediction? Of course, Sucker Punch feels like the obvious play, but if Steven's Flutter Mane just protects, then the Glamora can get a really powerful Meteor Beam off, for example, and just knock out the Tornadus. So I think Arbin's play here essentially, in order to counter what Steven just did, is go for that Sucker Punch air slash double up onto the Flutter Mane, hope to get that knockout. So it's Spiky Shield here. Where does Urshifu target? It is Sucker Punch into the Flutter Mane. Choice Band, critical hit, another crit. The rolls are just not going in Steven's way there. He did make the call. That just makes this game immediately over though, right? Where if the crit doesn't happen, at least Flutter Mane gets another attack off there, but now it's a 3v1 against this Glamora. So really tough rolls for Steven in this game. Back-to-back critical hits.
Yeah, those crits were really, really important. Those were really, really important. I would say, like, maybe if there's a Tien Pao on the field, like that Sucker Punch is even easier to get the knockout there, but the crit on top of it, Arbin still had a Pokemon in the back as well, but this is just going to be over. We get to see what that fourth is, as well as you're going to preserve that Urshifu for later, and it's the Arcanine.
So that is why we did not see a Fergaraf switch in. Arbin decides, you know what? I just don't think I'm going to be able to successfully get Trick Room up in this game. So now it's a 3v1. Of course, there's an Urshifu waiting to come back out. I think Urshifu probably could have just stayed in and clicked Sucker Punch there and gone for Protect.
Wait. Was the Meteor Beam into the Arcanine, though, no?
Let's see. Either way, I'd be impressed if Glamora did pull it off in a 3v1. But yeah, does correctly get the Arcanine. That is, of course, going to be very, very super effective and does get the knockout there. So nice play to, keep yourself in this one.
Yeah, really, especially after now that the Tailwinds are going to be over, but Arbin still has the Tornadus on the field.
Yeah, so you just set up Tailwind again and outpace the Glamora here. So
just go for the close
cool play, but yeah, you're just so far behind in this battle, essentially. And so I'm really thinking, well, one of the things I was thinking about, like the reason why you could consider just staying in, no need for Tailwind here. It looks like both players confident on their speed stats, so just knowing that the Urshifu's going to be faster than the Glamora, it means that you just secure that knockout. But what I was thinking is, do you really want to reveal what your final Pokemon is, right? Because we were actually wondering, is it Ferrograph, is it Hisuian Arcanine? But Arbin just wanted to, of course, get the guaranteed win there. So we're going to go down to game 3, and it's going to be really interesting because Steven had some really unfavorable rolls in that game. Tornadus got crit on turn 1, the Flutter Mane got crit by the Sucker Punch as well. Curious what that damage roll is, but with these booster energy sets, you normally invest a fair amount in HP and defense, so I don't know if with the Choice Band Sucker Punch, you get that knockout without the critical hit, but Arbin also has shown that he's willing to actually just drop that Ferrograph outright, and now you know about the Tornadus Flutter Mane adjustment. So I'm thinking if you're Steven, leading Glamora now becomes really interesting because Glamora resists those Dazzling Gleams pretty well.
Then does Arbin go one step further and then just try to go for something like the Ferrograph and the Blood Moon or Saluna right away?
Yeah, a lot of mind games here. Because I personally think it's like, if you actually get Trick Room set up in this game, Blood Moon feels like it could just absolutely dominate, but is it able to actually come out in that position, right? I think you could still go with Tornadus Flutter Mane and take the same trade. Steven can probably look back at that game and be like, okay, I got really unlucky. There were 2 different untimely crits, and also if I just click Sucker Punch on a Tornadus instead of getting knocked out by Air Slash, I'm also in probably pretty good shape in that game. And so, sometimes in these games, you might be just willing to run it back because you're like, okay, well, everything went not in my favor, and it was still a game that I felt like I could win just because I had the right tools for it. So the question is, how does Arbin adjust? Are you comfortable just going with Tornadus Flutter Mane again? It's really risky, I feel like, to bring Ferrograph in this matchup, but all it takes is one good Trick Room in order to start sweeping. The problem is, how do you position yourself to get that Trick Room?
Well, you could just go Tornadus Flutter Mane and then just bring the Ferrograph and the Blood Moon or Saluna in the back. Yeah. Because we didn't see either of those Pokemon, so it feels like, well, maybe if I know that Steven might run it back, then maybe I feel a little more confident in Ferrograph's ability to come to this matchup, but there are so many different calculations that our players are going to have to make. It's a spot in the top 4 on the line in this final game of this best of 3. And for Arbin, it's going to be the Tornadus and the Flutter Mane, and Steven with the Tornadus and Urshifu once again.
Yeah, so I really like the play like you were calling out. I mean, it looks like we're just going to see a run back of the same play happen.
Like instant lock.
But, you know, if you go for the same Tailwind Dazzling Gleam play from Arbin's end, I think that's a great trade because of the Covert Cloak on Tornadus. So what that means is on turn 2, you can switch out the Flutter Mane into Farigiraf immediately to bypass Sucker Punch going onto the Tornadus slot. So I do think if it's Farigiraf and Blood Moon in the back, which is a big adaptation from the last two we saw from Arbin's end, he might be happy just taking the same trade on turn 1.
I would do it. I'm willing to make that risk. Sometimes he's going to risk it for the biscuit for a spot in the top 4 and a piece of that juicy prize pool. But Arbin right here, we're going to see the Terra first.
All right, so this is going to be the Terra on Flutter Mane to make sure that you are not taking neutral damage from that Wicked Blow or Sucker Punch. So I expect a run back of the same turn 1 from last time around, but I think this time, you know, without a critical hit on Tornadus should hang around, but that's not necessarily a bad thing for Arbin if your last one is that Farigiraf.
Now, what's really interesting is the Flutter Mane is still, I don't know, like, do you just try to go for, like, double damage here? Like, if you expect the Farigiraf to be in the back, do you want to set Tailwind? Because we're going to see Steven set the Tailwind first here with the Tornadus, but if you want to get this Urshifu off the table right away,
Tailwind, yeah,
I think you just go for a double attack. Fluttermane's going to take this Wicked Blow super nicely. Even though it's a little bit close, it's still going to be a survival. So you get the Dazzling Gleam down onto both Pokemon, and then Tornadus gets to follow this up with something like an Air Slash.
Yeah, so like you said, doesn't go for the Tailwind. It's a little bit scary there because you open Fluttermane to, you know, maybe getting doubled up, but now this allows Arbin to actually stagger Tailwind by an extra turn if he wants to go for that option. Of course, now you have gotten the knockout onto what is the biggest threat to Farigiraf as well, right? And that's a really big deal, especially because there's no Chi-Yu in the back. So I am really curious if Arbin brought that Farigiraf in the back. It would be such a nice Pokemon to have out on the field right now.
Yeah, booster energy here. Fluttermane feels really nice to bring in this position, and we saw that poor Tornadus did have to take a little bit too much damage, but now that it took, now that it's taken the Dazzling Gleam a little bit better, Steven's in a more interesting spot. Do you want to keep the Tornadus in? Do you want to try to get some damage down? You know that the Fluttermane is at the very least going to be able to confirm a KO onto Arbin's Flutter if it stays in.
All right, Glamora switches in, so Arbin shouldn't really be able to deal too much damage at this point in the game. Flutter actually makes the pivot, though, so trying to conserve it. Hisuian Arcanine would be a great switch and to take the damage here, and it is going to be Arcanine coming out. So, of course, this is the Assault Vest set with that Dark Terra. It still doesn't love going up against Glamora, though, and so the question is, how is Arbin going to deal enough damage? Still no Tailwind set up either, but he's stalling out the Tailwind turns from the opposing side. Air Slash comes out, that will set up a layer of that, won't set up a layer of the Toxic Spikes, but critically here, burns another turn of Tailwind from Steven's end. So now Tornadus can consider going for like a Protect, or he can just Tailwind outright here. Steven conserving his Tornadus means that can Tailwind in the late game, but now I'm wondering if there is a Farigiraf still in the back.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that it feels like a Farigiraf might come to this game. So we might end up seeing just the Urshifu. But in this position, like, you kind of want the Arcanine to Terrastallize, but Steven is actually going to split damage here.
Yeah, it's an interesting spot, right? Also curious the speed interactions between the Glamora as well as the Hisuian Arcanine. The Arcanine, if it goes for the Terra, suddenly loses the weakness to Meteor Beam, but then Dazzling Gleam is super effective. And so, all right, no switch here, and Tornadus is going to set up that Tailwind. So Arbin has 2 extra turns of Tailwind to work with here.
Well, Moonblast is going to hit into the Tornadus to be able to confirm the KO, but now that opens up a spot for Arbin to bring in something else to utilize that Tailwind. The Glamora gets to go for the Earth Power, but with the Assault Vest on the Arcanine, it barely hangs
Are you kidding me?
It's going to knock itself out to the Flare Blitz recoil, but it's barely not going to take Flutter.
I see your survival and I raise you by 1. Both Pokemon end up fainting here. We know it's a very, very low HP Fluttermane in the back. Steven does not go for the Meteor Beam, goes for that Earth Power. Wow, what a crazy swing of events here. Flutter is so low, though, on Arbin's end. And what is this final Pokemon? It is going to be that Choice Band Urshifu.
Ooh, the Urshifu. Oh, so interesting here because you still have that Tornadus with the Rocky Helmet in the back. So you're able to get a little bit of chip down in the Urshifu if you call potentially a switch right. But the other thing about the Glamora is that it has not had a special attack boost yet. It has not felt comfortable going for that Meteor Beam.
Oh, this is so stressful, right? Because it's Banded Urshifu. You have to lock into Sucker Punch or Wicked Blow. So here's the switch. Where is Urshifu targeting, and is it going for Sucker Punch or Wicked Blow?
Feel like it has to be Wicked Blow in this scenario because you know you can get the damage down either way into anything, just really knowing how low the targets are for the Tornadus and the Flutter Mane.
Oh, it's the Sucker Punch, though! Oh
no
my
way.
goodness!
That feels so critical here.
And
Flutter Mane's gonna go the
double
Shadow
up.
Ball into the Glamora, protect, making sure that the Glamora sticks around, and Steven now gets a chance to set up the Tailwind again.
Oh my goodness.
What a play!
This is so scary though, because you are still staring down a choice band Sucker Punch, right? Yeah, so Steven's like, okay, I know that you have to click Sucker Punch right now. I'm gonna Tailwind. Like, how do you get out of this position, right? Because Urshifu is exerting Sucker Punch pressure, and that probably just knocks out all 3 Pokemon at this point, right? So you have to go for non-attacking moves, but there is still this low HP Flutter Mane that's still able to deal damage. It is gonna be the double from the Glamora here.
Wow. I mean, at this point, you're kind of hoping that this Flutter Mane is going to just go for like a Dazzling Gleam here, just to be able to help pick up the KO onto the Tornadus. But if it's not, it's just going to be a double into the Glamora that gets negated once again.
Yeah, getting that double is such a big deal, right? Because Shadow Ball would still do really good damage in the Glamora. That's choice specs, and so the double Spiky Shield bails Glamora from getting knocked out. Maybe it survives there, but then it takes so much damage that, you know, you keep pressuring with Sucker Punch and Shadow Ball. I don't know if we'll get to the point where Sucker Punch PP is actually relevant here, but Steven's got to be thinking about it, right? Like, it's so scary because if you click an attacking move and Urshifu targets correctly, things just faint. Tornadus protects. The mind games here are unbelievable. Where is Urshifu going here? Okay,
Whoa.
Steven's just going for the double or the triple now. Does not get the triple. Sucker is going to fail again, but Flutter will get another Shadow Ball off.
Yeah, the Shadow Ball this time does land its mark into the Glamora after trying 2 times before.
Oh,
It's just a
gets the
knockout.
KO.
So Glamora now down and out of this game, and Steven has to put all of the offensive pressure onto this low HP Flutter Mane.
Oh, but it's so close. Tailwind just petered out, so now your Tornadus is faster than the opposing Flutter Mane. So Sucker Punch can go into either slot right now. Oh, my other question is whether or not Steven's...
Speed Booster's gone too.
It is gone, yeah. And does Bleakwind Storm from Tornadus knock out Urshifu? This endgame feels so tense, but Arbin with this Sucker Punch mind games here. Okay, I mean, yeah, you basically have to like protect one Pokemon and try to knock out Urshifu with the other. And so the game plan here is to try to protect the Flutter Mane and then knock out the Urshifu with the Bleakwind Storm. Where does Arbin target with Sucker Punch? No protect on either. Okay, so Sucker just connects onto the Flutter Mane here.
Right.
Bleakwind Storm, will it miss? Will we get the knockout onto the Urshifu? It's going to miss the Flutter Mane! Oh, it connects on Urshifu, gets the knockout. If that Bleakwind connected, that was game over. Bleakwind and Dazzling covers for both, but Bleakwind misses. Flutter here now secures the knockout with Tornadus, and Arbin is gonna move on to top 4.
What an explosive last couple of turns. Arbin getting